like to call this meeting to order and ask that our district clerk leads us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion, please, that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Thank you. All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Treasurer's report. In your packet is the Treasurer's report for the month ending July 31st, 2013. May I have a motion, please, that the Treasurer's report, including the cash report, general fund cash report, the general fund revenue status report, general fund budget status report, school lunch fund cash report, and school lunch fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending July 31st, 2013 be approved?
Second.
Questions or comments? Thank you. All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. We have no special reports this evening, and I have no indication that anybody wishes to address the board. And we welcome our student representative. Gwen, welcome back.
Hi. Sorry, I haven't been here over the summer. It was kind of a busy summer for me. As a senior of high school officially now, the first week of school is over, and we've moved on to our official first full week of school. It was cute to see the little freshmen who didn't know where to go. But the teachers here are always very nice, and they stand outside the doors and they point people in different directions. I think this week is really the start of when clubs have their first meetings. So I know Model UN is having a meeting Thursday, and I think Environmental Club starts maybe this Wednesday or next Wednesday, not positive. I play field hockey, and last Saturday, varsity field hockey had a pretty exciting win over Fairport. Just gonna put that out there. And we also, something about the scheduling, we have another home game with Fairport tomorrow. So we play them again at home again tomorrow. So hopefully we'll win. Thank you. I know the class of 2014, the senior class, is meeting tomorrow. We are doing kind of like a council group, and there is a meeting Friday to start discussing homecoming events. Homecoming is the 28th of September, so that's just kind of like an outlook so far. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gwen. Welcome back. Any questions or comments? All right. Thank you. And our next order of business is superintendent's reports. Dr. Grimm.
Okay, great. Tonight we're going to talk about student and staff honors, have an enrollment update, some opening day comments. We're going to take a look at the welcome back video, and we're going to have an update on the athletic and PE facilities improvement project, and to also talk about the potential district-wide security project and have an update for that. Some student and staff honors. We had NISMA All-State announcements. The following PHS students have been selected to participate in the NISMA All-State Music Conference in December. We've got all of those students there. And one of our librarians was selected for some seminars. Indian Landing Elementary School librarian Nancy Logie was selected out of many teachers across the United States to participate in 2 seminars this past summer: the National Endowment for the Humanities Workshop on the Transcontinental Railroad and the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History Seminar on Colonial History. Outstanding opportunity. An enrollment update. It's always interesting to look at the total numbers that we have at different levels. This is our K-5 level of elementary schools, and we can see the 4 different elementary schools, and we can also see the numbers of students in each grade and the number of sections that we have, or the number of teachers at each of those grade levels. Right now, as you remember, toward the end of the summer, we were very concerned about the Indian Landing kindergarten, which crept up from, I think it was 58 or 59 in early summer, and then it was rapidly rising to 63, 64, 65, and we made a determination to split that. And at the same time, we did a scan over all of the sections, and we noticed that in Harris Hill in the third grade was creeping up 74, 75, and we split that from 3 sections of 25, 26, and 25, and into 4 sections, and it still crept up higher. So you can imagine if we did not do that, we would be looking at 26, 26, 27. And that would have been not a good situation. So it's always challenging, especially when you get around the cusp numbers. And then we have our special education population, but we've got a total of 1,915 students. So when we look at the actual, which we've got for 13, 14, that's the dark blue, which says 1,915 down at the bottom. Our 12, 13 numbers were 1,914. And then we can see what the projections are. And our projection for this school year was 1,900. So we've got 15 more students than our projection. And as that projects out, it's pretty stable for a K through 5, our elementary enrollment projections. And then we look at the secondary enrollment. We've got nearly 1,100 in grades 6, 7, and 8. And at the high school, we've got 1,440. So our total K-12 enrollment, 4,451. And when we look at the secondary enrollment with the 12, 13 in that first column, that was last school year. At the secondary level, well, we didn't put it, I don't have it split out by that, but looking at the middle level, pretty consistent, but then we do see a drop over the next 5 years of about 100 students in the middle school, down to 995. And then if we look at the high school, pretty stable. We've got, last year we had 1,466, and we project in 17, 18, 1,467. So there's a little bit of that population dip that's coming through that'll reveal itself in the middle school in the future years. Overall, it looks like we've got the 4,451 now, and then as we project out 5 years, about 80 students or so less. And Mark, any comments?
Not really, other than that, the actuals are very close to projections, so we projected 443. We're ending up at 4,451, so that's 8 students difference, so that's very close. Depending on the grade level, if we could go back to just the elementary schools, it appears a little bit, 15 students, oops.
Sorry.
Okay,
Well,
that's
you
all
can
right.
operate that too, right?
I can do it too.
Okay,
So
good.
maybe just one of us should though. So we projected 1,900 students against an actual of 1,915. That's very, very close, but the model seems to be over-projecting a little bit in terms of the loss of students, and I think that makes sense if we believe, and we'll be doing more analysis of this. I'll be coming to the board in October or November with or how we did a full analysis of this. This is really just the quick look. But I think it's starting to make sense over the course of the last couple of years that if our enrollment decline is slowing down, and we're stabilizing, the model's built on history, and if the history is a decline, we'll have this period where the model over-predicts our loss. It's looking back, it's using historical averages, and as that history changes, the model takes a while, is designed to take a little while to catch up to it. So I don't think 15 students is at all something to be concerned about in terms of a miss, but it maybe is something we should pay attention to as we move forward.
Okay, some opening day remarks. Just a wonderful opening. We've got experienced administrators all across the board, and that always makes for a smooth opening. Open day video. There we go.
Maybe got in the wrong spot.
And we should thank the creators of that wonderful video, Nancy Bradstreet, our Director of Communications, and Mike Sidoti, our technical. It's quite the composition when you take all those different things and you put the music and you display and you have the, they just did a wonderful job. And other thank yous, sometimes we get this if you work in the summer in the school district. What do you do all summer? Oh, not much. After a while, you just say nothing really. But really, our buildings and grounds did a wonderful job. Transportation, not only the drivers that were continuing to drive, but everybody that was working the routing software and all of the technical aspects there. And the town of Penfield is a great partner with us through not only the educational services and the recreation services through the recreation department, all of those wonderful programs that were going on, and the Penfield Library, all those great things that were happening. And they helped us pave the parking lot at Harris Hill and a bunch of other things. So there's quite a great partnership there, and we thank the town of Penfield for that and their staff. Our clerical staff, just outstanding amounts of work, and the administrators and the teachers that were working over the summer. There's only really 8 or 9 weeks, but it goes by really quick. It seems like it's September's far away at the end of June, but it doesn't take long. And the Board of Education was working all summer as well, so thank you. There are 12 months in the year for board members, that's for sure. And a couple of the highlights really of just opening and the framework for the school year. There's lots of change. The Regents Reform Agenda from New York State Education Department involves the Common Core Learning Standards and the Common Core instructional shifts, including the annual professional performance review, which is the evaluation system for teachers and principals, and an emphasis on data-driven instruction. And really, they use these 3 circles to point these out in a lot of their demonstrations about how to conceptualize this, but really where all of those 3 things intersect in the middle is where we produce college and career-ready students. So that some of the data about students that are going on to college, students that are going on to careers, is they're not prepared in general. High school graduates are not prepared. I think the estimate was in New York State, I think it's about 74% of students graduate high school, and of that 74%, 34 or 35% are prepared for college or careers. So even though they're graduating high school with a credential, they're not really quite ready. So that's the big push over the last 4 years or so from the State Education Department, being college and career ready. So instituting the Common Core Learning Standards is quite the challenge. It's not only what you teach, it's how you're teaching it. And this is the framework that I've come up with in terms of how to take all of these different things and think about it on a smaller level in terms of a number of things. But really to be strategic, plan, focus, take action, and be leaders of the change. And talked about that with teachers on opening day, that they're really experts at this. This is what they do every day. They have to take a curriculum and be strategic about what and when. They know how to focus and plan and teach, and then be leaders in the classroom. So to try to look at the daunting task of how to implement the Common Core Learning Standards, it seems scary, but you have to remind teachers that they're prepared for it and they know how to do that. But you have to do that within the context of all of these other important things that really make school special, and I think makes Penfield special. With our culture, the way that we're collaborative, our communication, the character and competence that's demonstrated and that builds trust, and to think of it in terms of continuous improvement, just getting a little better each day, and being change leaders instead of kind of receivers, but be the leaders, and take care of each other, and care about each other and the kids and the community and what you're doing, and be proud of the work that you're doing. And here's some pictures that I think Nancy was able to take on the first day of school. At the high school, lots of smiling faces. Lots of new book bags getting off at the bus stop, that's for sure. It's just wonderful when the kids come back. It's just, there's a feeling of exuberance and happiness that you can feel in the buildings and with the teachers and with the kids and each other. So with that, okay.
Before we move on, Dr. Grimm, I need to acknowledge there was a couple of questions regarding the enrollment update. My apologies for not noticing
yeah,
before.
we didn't do that. Okay. All right. Right back there on one of these, maybe.
Yeah, I know that we had some last-minute staffing changes to make sure that class sizes didn't get out of control and all that, but, so I'm gonna try and keep this at board level. When I look at the numbers, I'm trying not to get too in the weeds, but for example, Scribner has 4 sections for kindergarten with 82, and 5 sections of first grade and there's 79. So I know that at the last minute, you try to balance things out, but the bottom line of Scribner is, and looking at how many sections of 5 they have, that building is looking really, really tight. And when we did this Seversky study, I know that some of the schools had a little more space than others, but it wasn't a difference of where you would expect to see 100 more kids in one building from another. So I just think partly as we go into budgeting, I want to make sure we look at class size, because clearly if you've got some kindergartens that are at 16 and some that are closer to 21,
it's a big difference.
Yeah, the fives,
so-
actually, I should have clarified, and I think was when we had the data prepared, the person that put the fives in, that's the special ed class. So it's not a direct
Okay, so there's maybe
advisor.
what people wouldn't know is a 12-1-1 or a 3-1-1
Yeah.
or 6-1-1,
So it
okay.
could be the additional
Yeah.
class of the 8 or
'Cause
9.
Especially, I'm just thinking of the parents of the younger kids, and class size is a big issue, and it was years ago. So I think sometimes it's helpful to look at what our general class sizes, because this, I'm trying to crunch
Yeah,
the
this
numbers
one's,
at my seat here, but sometimes it's useful for us to look at, how are we doing on class size over time? Is it creeping up, or,
Well, that's a
that kind of
good
thing?
point, because that's one of them, a very important variable. And we do have another spreadsheet that we use when we're analyzing, and so you can get quick look, you can see the class size right away. You don't have to try to divide it in your head. And with those number fives up there, with those special ed students, it's hard to tell exactly
Okay.
where those are.
That's helpful, because I think people at home might, like me, be looking at that number and thinking
Yeah.
that there's some wild differences. So, but I know that every building principal is fighting for as many sections of every grade as he or she can have. I know that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, just the walls end and you can't fit them all. So just,
What we can
again,
do is
moving
when we-
forward, I
in
just let's
October,
make sure as a board, we keep an eye on that.
We can easily
Yeah.
do that, we'll do the analysis a little differently, so that pulls out a little better in October when we do the full analysis. It is a very relevant budget and question for our community as well, because as the elementary schools get out of balance with each other, they're all about similarly sized. So, the only way you can move students from one building to the other is to look at those boundary lines between them too, and so that becomes quickly irrelevant and challenging question. So it is an important thing to take a look at as we go along. So we'll as we get to that enrollment report, we'll make sure to spend a little bit extra time on that this year.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Any other questions or comments regarding enrollment? All right, thank you.
As people go out and as board members go to the various PTSAs and PTAs and HSA meetings, I told the high school parents to watch that video, so we will go out there and sell your video.
That's
as we
great.
go out in the community, because
We
it
got to
is
put
fun
some
to watch.
credits at the end, the scrolling credits
they-
for Nancy and
Well,
Mike,
they forgot that.
I think. So we'll turn that over to Mark. I provided a brief update on the capital projects at the last meeting, but we're sprinkling it over again to keep it in the consciousness and also provide ample opportunities for people to ask questions if you have it. So Mark, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure. So just to remind everyone, we're at the last board meeting in August, Dr. Grimm provided some information about previously approved capital projects and where we were with regard to them. I'm not going to revisit that, but just really want to focus tonight on an update of, as we're moving forward with, there is always work to be done in the school, and capital projects are always part of our considerations as we move forward. So as the board knows, we've got two projects working their way through a process, one around security, and the project that's more advanced at this point is athletics and physical education. So with regard to the security audit, the board had commissioned a study based on some national incidents that to examine the security and the safety of our buildings. And this this is not about necessarily construction or capital project work. It included a site assessment of all the buildings, a look at practices, procedures, how we work in the buildings, because that has as much to do, if not more, with the security and the safety of our kids and staff than does the physical plant. Review of our emergency procedures, our practice, do we train, and an evaluation of do we train differently in different buildings, how do we do all the kinds of things. And that report has been available, the board's been provided with an executive summary of it, and if you'd like to see the entire document, it's 4 inches of stuff at the district office. But part of that process was to identify some potential capital needs, because we wanted to be able to address them if we had to. That process, that report generated a list of potential scope items. This isn't all inclusive, this is a summary of the more significant items. And we're in the process now of whittling that down, of making decisions, of trying to determine in our estimation were missed that we would consider important, or if there are things that were considered on the list that are on the list currently that we wouldn't necessarily want to undertake based on our practice, the way our buildings work. So to that end, we've worked our way through the list. We've applied some sort of placeholder numbers, and now the next step would be to meet with the principals. We have this scheduled for next week, but the architect will be meeting with the principals to go over that list. They've had it in hand, but they haven't had an opportunity to talk to it yet. They've also had the review in hand and haven't had that talk opportunity yet. So we begin that next week. We intend to have Campus Construction then, who is our construction manager, assist in pricing the estimates to make sure that they're as accurate as possibly can be. And with that, we should have in hand an estimated scope and a cost at the September 24th or the October 8th meeting. So that's, right now you've seen potential scope items without cost. We're trying to refine that scope. We're trying to make sure we've identified all the cost items and have a rational starting basis for a conversation. With regard to the athletics and PE facilities improvement project, it's further along. We've been having those conversations for the last 6 or 7 months. So just to remind the public and the board that this came really out of inquiries and conversations during the superintendent's entry plan. These items had been in the long-range plan, but particularly with regard to a potential field lighting project hadn't been addressed in the past. So we're right now investigating that and trying to move forward towards what a comprehensive solution that makes some sense. So an advisory team's been gathering information to prime the pump, if you will, of costs and benefits, lighting and traffic studies, and a draft field use policy. Those have been presented at previous meetings. They've been on the board, or I'm sorry, they've been on the web, available for review, and we're beginning to collect questions now from the public who have interest in this project and process. So you can see the output there of that advisory team, draft conceptual design, and along with the potential impacts of that potential design, and a field use report that will inform the conversation about how the fields would get used. So those are on the website. You can see here some details about what they include. So, for example, the field use plan talks about, how we might use them. Are there deadlines and curfews, and what about music and those kinds of questions? Or we have at least a draft, a kicking off spot for beginning of those conversations, as well as some traffic study information and field lighting. In terms of the conceptual design, where it stands right now, and the overall scope of the project, renovations to the East Gym are part of this. Members of the public and board who remember a number of years ago, the rubber floor at Harris Hill was replaced. That same floor's in the East Gym, so we're looking at replacing that poured rubber floor, replacing the lighting, replacing the wall pads and backboards, and replacing a 1972 vintage rooftop air handler. So essentially a tune-up of that gym space. It also includes a small storage addition similar to what was approved last year for the Bay Trail Gym. So that's to be able to get wrestling mats and other equipment out of the gym and into storage. Also includes field lighting, so lighting at the synthetic turf field, at the track and soccer field, and also included pathway lights from the community center. So you see here the split up of the costs for those two pieces of scope, about $1.3 million for the East Gym and about $1.5 million for the field lighting portion of the project. And we're not, we don't have for you tonight a full-blown presentation, because we're on this is a reminder to you and to our public that we're working our way through this process. We're still developing the presentation for September 19th, but that's upon us. That's next Thursday, would be the first public informational meeting. And our intent here and the goal of this is to listen to what our community has to say with regard to this work. So towards that, we have some goals for that meeting. We intend to share what we know, which is where we're at with regard to planning and reports, to review any questions that we have to date, and I thank the board for the questions that they've submitted, because they're going to help guide us in terms of that presentation. If you have questions, we've had some questions sent into us on the website. We're gathering questions, and we're trying to project what some information might be that people would want to know. So all that is being put together with an idea that we would review it, talk about it, share what we know at that meeting next Thursday, and then gather new questions. We're in the process of designing how best to gather the information from people who come. We want to provide an opportunity for people to give us written input, to provide us input on the website, and also at that meeting to stand up and give us their comments, feelings, or concerns about the nature of the project. I don't expect that we're going to be able to answer every question. I would hope that we couldn't answer every question that we get. The idea here is to gather information, not stand and deliver. So we want this really to be a dialogue. We won't have all the answers, but we want to hear all the questions. And because we know that this is a process, we've scheduled a second public information meeting on October 15th. So there's a board meeting in between that. So we hope that there's going to be an opportunity for a dialogue as we go along, for questions asked, questions answered, things we haven't thought of, things we should have perhaps thought of. Maybe the things we have thought of will provoke other questions. So want to be able to engage our community around this project, and we think that this is a process that'll ensure that we have a chance to gather all that input. This is a sample agenda. Nancy encouraged me not to share this because it's not the agenda we'll see next Thursday. We're continuing to work on it, but it'll be something like this. We want to share what we know. We know what the tentative project scope is. Let's talk about that in some detail. We know what the proposed uses for the field are. When would they be used? What times would they be used for? Who would be on them? What would it make available that's not available now? What would the costs be, both we've talked a little bit tonight about the costs of the project itself, but there are other costs you can think of. What about the costs of the lights themselves, of running them, of replacement, of maintenance, those kinds of things? What about costs of security, perhaps, for night games? We can all think of those kinds of questions. We're all trying to generate answers in anticipation of the question. To have the discussion at that meeting. So we've thought about some of the things you see here: sound control, light control, hours of use, parking and traffic, security. How would that work? What does that mean? I don't pretend, and I think we should be forthright about the fact that we're not going to have thought of every question. We just want to make sure we hear everyone, gather that input, and generate more questions. So sharing, discussion, and input is the purpose of both those meetings, and we hope to engage in that dialogue. If the board makes a decision then based on this input to go forward, this is a potential schedule of what that might be. So the board could finalize scope in October, make some determinations about environmental impacts in November, and the earliest you could consider voting to schedule a future vote would be in December. All the way along, it's our intention to make available resources on the web, under the facilities project info. There's a quick link if you want to click on that. We're going to be putting questions and information up as we generate them. We're in the process of designing right now how we would gather the information at the meeting next Thursday. So want to make sure we capture that and are able to report that out fairly. So that's where we're at right now. Tonight's really just a reminder, because our next real major step with regard to discussion of this will be in the high school commons next Thursday on the 15th. 19th, sorry. The 19th. Are there any questions that we could, about the schedule or about the project, that we could talk about right now?
Thank you, Mark. Barb?
Mark is a neighbor to this project. I got a very lovely letter in August about the meeting. Just curious, though, other than my neighborhood, what other neighborhoods got, like, formal letters? Or did the whole district get letters?
Nancy can tell us how many letters we sent out, 300 and some odd letters. So we sat down with a map of the high school and essentially picked all the neighborhoods immediately adjoining and sent letters to anyone in the home. So Peachtree got letters, Hotchkiss Circle, I'll leave
Wheelock.
somebody out, Wheelock, all the way around.
Did Devonshire and Corwin, they all got letters?
I'm looking at Nancy to help me remember. We can certainly provide that information. We know the neighborhoods, we know the addresses, we can certainly.
Just only
I
because.
think it's worth.
Right. I just happened, somebody brought it up to me this weekend when I was with them. They live right over here on Devonshire, and I was saying, well, the meeting's coming up, and they said, what meeting are you talking about? So that's why I'm just
Can
asking.
send you a letter, and I suspect we did. I'm not certain,
Okay.
of that individual. It could have gotten lost. The other thing I'd
Right.
point out, though, is we did shortly thereafter send out a newsletter that the front cover page was
Right.
information.
Right.
So they got 2 pieces of
Okay.
notice about it with the same date in it.
Just checking, thanks.
Mark?
Mark, could you explain your thoughts with the special election versus the normal election in May?
That's a decision that the board will have to make. The advantage to the special election is that it currently lead times for construction work are at, I forget how many weeks, it's months and months and months and months. So the sooner that project can get started and in queue, the sooner we'll be able to go through the process to begin to design and build. And on the part of the people who are interested in a field lighting project, there's generations of students who are going to graduate and not be able to participate. So they're concerned about that. The board will have to make a decision about whether you want to. The other alternative would be to put it up at the same time as the budget vote in May. That would slow down the process, but it's certainly another alternative, depending on how the board wants to focus that attention. One advantage, I think, of an individual vote is I do know that one of the things I've learned about this through the years is that our capacity to communicate is limited. We can talk and talk and talk and talk, but people pay attention for the amount of time that they have to give us. And the more we have to explain, the worse a job we end up doing. I believe that one of the advantages of a separate vote is it's about that. And we can talk about that, and that's the focus of the vote, and that's the conversation that we have. I think when we mix 2 and 3 things together, we start to lose our message. But again, that'll be a board's decision.
Right. Any other questions or comments? John?
Going back to the security capitals improvement.
Yes.
Mark, I know we did the state required a 5-year facilities improvement plan, I think it was last year.
Right.
And it was
No,
like
it was longer ago than that,
All
actually.
right, well, it was I remember it was like $75 million in costs that we had to
Right.
project out through that plan. So in regard to the security piece, would that bump something, or where would it drop into that?
It's, that's the 5-year plan, if you will. We should probably review where we're at with regard to that, because it's now 4 years old. I confess I'd lost track of our history around that as well. We've accomplished much of what we set out to do in that, because you're correct, the 5-year facilities evaluation totaled about $75 million, and we picked out pieces of that we wanted to accomplish over the subsequent 5 years. We should review where we're at with regard to that, but we've accomplished much of it. The security project would be, many of these items I think will be included in that 5-year plan, but they wouldn't have necessarily been packaged together as security. To be, honestly, what's happened in the meantime with regard to security, it's risen in terms of concern in school districts because of the shootings, and districts have become more cognizant, I think, of looking at those as a higher priority item. So things like, I think an easy example would be entrances to schools. How controlled are the entrances to schools? Do you have doors that, you know, could be used to prevent an intruder from getting further than the lobby? Those kinds of concerns, we can find those doors in the $77 million, but they wouldn't have been assigned as high a priority. It's a bit of a reprioritization of that plan. With regard to the plan itself, we're going to have to go back to that next year because we'll be obligated, I should check the timing, but I believe that next year during the school year, we will be obligated to resubmit to the State Education Department a 5-year plan, so, which will mean redoing the whole $77 million and kind of looking at the whole thing anew. So it's a reset.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you're right. I think it brings out things that we had identified, but priorities have changed, and putting them in the forefront, I think, is important, and I just wanted to get an idea of where, it's probably good to pull that out again and look, because there might be something else that could be as pertinent to that, that if we're going to do it,
We should do it at the same time.
Yeah, let's do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Or it might change the priority list. I'm very interested in hearing, you know, we have, you know, this, if you think about, and it's a rational process, but a security consultant, look at our buildings, talk about what we need. I'm very interested in, over the course of the next week, in understanding how the principals see that same issue, because they live it in a different way. And I'm not sure that their priorities will be the same. I think it's a healthy conversation. You think that's important, why, and what's that mean? I think we'll learn a lot. You know, the process is often as important as the outcome. We'll have an important outcome in this case, but we're spending a lot of time talking about, well, you do it, why, you need doors because of your process, because of the way you do something, not because of the, if that makes sense.
Any other questions or comments? Camille?
I didn't realize the facilities project was that old, because I actually pulled out, and it says 2011 on the cover, and the BCS says 2010, the Building Condition Survey.
Right.
But maybe it started in 2008, and it takes years. But one of the things, so I looked at
Well,
some
this
of the...
is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm
Well,
just
I'll
trying
just
to
ask
think
my
of the
question.
years, but
So
yeah.
the lights were,
Could be a
in
year
that
off.
study, and it said inflation included, the price tag on the lights was $644,000, but it was
Right.
just for the stadium. And that did say inflation assumed, but we're talking about lighting 2 areas plus the pathway. So at some point, I'd like to see it, you know, which is, you know, break it down a little bit. The other
Sure.
piece that was part of, it was way at the bottom, it was called site improvements, I think, and it was some parking lot stuff. And there's also the tennis court resurfacing, which was like a $60,000 price tag item, that I would say that let's make sure that maybe we should, that might be something we want to add in too, because that, learning what we heard from the boosters tonight, that's a big ticket item that they're not going to probably be able to pay from their either individual program or global. So I kind of want to know the status of the tennis courts, and it's, you know, it's a fairly small piece, but that was one of the pieces, as we go back, we could look at. So, and the other question I have, I guess, about the general cost is, it's interesting that there's one price, but if all I can equate it to is if in my own home, if I was going to do a project, which I would love to do, Steve, Rutan, if I wanted to replace my kitchen counters, I would look at Corian and I would look at granite.
Sure.
And I would look at, well, maybe I should just replace the linoleum or whatever. And so I would have some different options, and I would ask different people. Now, in a school district, ultimately, you can really have to go with the lowest bidder. But we do have options. So I'm just wondering, did SEI already give you options and you picked, or how do you come up with, these are the lights that we're going to buy?
Well, that's an architectural question. I'd encourage, we can certainly answer that or ask that in terms of how they designed the lighting project. I do know one of the things I've learned, because I'm sort of a lighting novice, you know, this is new ground for me as well. But certainly there's, I think in the industry and in our folks, a strong preference for certain manufacturers and styles of lights that they believe, provide both quality illumination and help control the light spillage off of the sites. So I know they have looked at that. I know, for example, that as part of this process, they considered the idea of LED lights. But I won't go into it tonight. Certainly we can talk about it at the meeting. But so there has been lots of conversation about that. The pricing, though, is going to ultimately, I think, boil down to scoping. How much do you want to do? There's lighting in there for the turf field, for the track, and for the grass field, and for the pathway. Certainly one piece that can be considered is all that necessary? Is all that what we intend to do? What are the costs of that? What are the benefits of that? We've lumped it together for these presentations because we thought it made it easier sort of to understand the scope of things without getting too far into the weeds, but certainly we can provide that split out and then we can have that conversation. And perhaps that's what we should do.
John?
Not related to this, but the construction of the townhomes adjacent to us?
Yes.
Any issues or anything?
None that I'm aware of. I know that there was a tiny issue just before the start of school. The contractor connecting to the sewers, because they needed to connect to sewers that ran across our property. As they did that, they created a little sinkhole, but the town was right on top of that. Our folks were as well. That was Mr. McNiff's first board meeting. He got to inspect a sinkhole. That the construction itself, to my knowledge, hasn't created any issues. It seems there may be one I'm unaware of, but I don't know anything.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it.
Okay, this concludes our superintendent's reports. We are now on to board business. Board members, we are on page 3 of your agenda. Financial items. This is just a regulation that is being added to a policy, so it is for your information. And I guess the correction we made that we should not be voting on this because it's a regulation did not make it into this agenda. But I will read it just for the information of the public. Policy number 3280-R3, that's a regulation, supervision for outside groups using the auditorium. It includes the cost for supervision when required of outside groups using the turf or the track facilities. A fee of $60 per event plus $15 an hour after 4 hours is charged to the outside organization. Currently, there is not a fee structure to provide supervisors for outside groups using the auditorium. The cost of providing trained supervisors at the discretion of the theater manager for outside groups using the PHS auditorium will be added to policy 3280-R3 as indicated in your agenda, and that is the $60 per event plus $15 an hour after 4 hours. So that is for your information and for the public's information.
Excuse me if I could.
Sure.
The reason that I asked Marcia to include this as adoption is that fee structure gets annually adopted by the board. It's an odd thing, and maybe we should look at this at some point. It's enshrined in our regulations. The whole schedule is in our regulations, but the board adopts the fee schedule every year at the reorganization meeting. So as we talked about this, I said, well, if you adopted it in July as part of the reorganization meeting, and we're making a change, maybe the board should consider adopting it as well. So that's why it is a regulation, but that's why it's there for your action.
All right, well, thank you for the clarification then. All right. Okay, then, board members, may I have a motion, please, that this fee schedule be approved?
Second.
Questions or comments about it? Thank you. All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. We have no policy review at this time, and I just want to let you know that the policy committee starts meeting again next week. So policies will start coming to you very soon. President's remarks. We received an email from Jody Siegel from Monroe County School Board. At our September 24th meeting, we're going to be discussing the resolutions that are for New York, that are to be adopted at the New York State School Board Convention. So if you need a paper copy, please let Marcia know, or else we received an email with the link of where to find this on the web. And I guess John will be leading this discussion, and then we'll be joining Area 2 at the annual meeting that they have in Canandaigua to discuss all the resolutions.
26th.
All right, thank you. That will be a great Saturday morning for you. All right, thank you. And I received from Marcia, an updated schedule for the HSA PTA Booster Space SEPTA meetings. So I will be emailing that to you, and it took a while to get it because we waited for all the meetings to get on the calendar. I will be sending it to you, and if, again, we agreed on rotation. Try to take one meeting a month. That would be great. Don't do more than that because we have plenty of meetings, and with one meeting a month each, then we are covering as much as we can. The Parent Advisory Board understands that we cannot make all of their meetings. They are asking, though, if you cannot make their meetings, to let them know. That would be great for them. Yes, Catherine.
Can we get contact information?
I have requested that.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I have requested that, and I've requested phone numbers, actually, other than emails, because at the last minute when something comes up, you really want a phone number rather than an email,
Right,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. And that's it for President's remark. Unfinished business, we have none that I know of. And under new business, we have a report from John Piper regarding the Legislative Committee.
We thought we'd put a legislative update in here periodically because it impacts everything we do, obviously. And as your representative on the Monroe County School Board's Legislative Committee and as your delegate to the Legislative Convention at the State Convention, it's important. So one of the things I wanted to do is, and for the public too, in the last 2 pages of your packet, I wanted to just periodically go over basically the white papers that Monroe County School Boards Association has put out, which are basically our position papers in support of kids. And I'm not going to read them all tonight, but the ones that are in there for the public tonight are measuring and maintaining teacher quality. Another one saying state leaders must support their public schools. And another one, how the New York State Legislature can help school districts with school safety. Now, there are certainly other ones, and these are available at their district office and for the board, obviously, to digest. It's going to be an interesting legislative year, as I mentioned in my email. In addition to the normal things that we'll do, we have a trip to Albany in December, and then an overnight in March to Albany, which all of you will receive information on if you haven't been. It's important to get out front and meet with the legislators, and in December we meet with their staff. But more importantly, next year is a positioning year for all the elected officials in New York State because they're all up for re-election. So as long everything is on the table and everything is off the table in terms of speaking. So it's important that we have this type of support from the board and all the boards, and everybody's getting geared up to another very interesting year. So we'll have this on the agenda periodically to update. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions or comments for John? All right, Nancy, is there any chance that we can have those position papers on the website under the board section? All right.
Marcia's got it.
Marcia has them. All right, thank you. Maybe if members of the public are interested in seeing what our positions are about, that would be great. Thank you. Any other new business? Anybody? No? Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, that the meeting be adjourned at 8:37 p.m.? Questions, comments? Thank you. All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you.